disabilities. So just a quick warning that we are recording this session. I hope that's okay for everybody. So you should have gotten a little warning that came up there just to let you know that it's being recorded by the host. So this will be for sharing with anybody who's not able to come today. And it's also just for our own learning as well. So next slide, please there, Hazel. So here's the timetable for today. We've got online volunteering during the global pandemic, which I think a few different people have learned about as well, as being a requirement or something that's become of interest during the pandemic. Roundtable on disability inclusion and the importance of leadership engagement. And then we'll have a short lunch break, quite an early lunch there for the people in Ireland. And then session 3 is Vibity training resources, showcase and discussion. And then the core humanitarian standards, which is a practical introductory session for small NGOs. So next slide there, Hazel. Okay, so this is the housekeeping rules, and you're going to see this every time at the beginning of every session. So just as a reminder, we are going to have captioning in English. There should be a link in the chat box at every session that can access that for you. We're going to have the International Sign Language interpreter, and Robert there is working away, trying to keep up with me, which I appreciate. Useful links, so links to things that people reference should pop up in the chat box as well. If you have technical problems, technical questions, please send a direct message to Hazel. That's always an option in the chat box. There's a drop-down menu. You can select an individual. So please try and send those queries to Hazel. And then for questions about the content, please use the chat box to make questions. And then there will be question sessions for most of our sessions, question sections for most of our sessions. And you can put your hand up there to ask those questions. So we'd ask everybody to keep yourselves muted and to keep your cameras turned off. This helps with this spotlighting system that we have at the moment so that only the speakers are visible. We recommend using the gallery function so that you can see speakers down the right-hand side, particularly if there's a few people speaking, as there will be sometimes. Accessible recording of the conference will be available after the event. Please tweet the event if you can, if you have a Twitter account, to let other people know. And we'll be posting tweets in the chat box, anything that we see. So reminder links to the following sessions will be emailed to you at the end of each session. So we're doing what we've done before. Each session is separate. So we'll close one session, the Zoom link won't work, and then there's a new Zoom link for the next session. And the only other thing that I'd add here is please, when you are speaking, remember to try and speak a little more slowly and a little more clearly than you might usually, so that our captioners and our interpreters can keep up with you. And I think that's it from me. We can start the first session, which is online volunteering during the global pandemic. And for that, the session will be hosted by Mark Cummings, who's the head of Comhlámh, and that's the Irish Association of Development Workers and Volunteers. Mark will be talking about how volunteering has changed over the course of this global pandemic, and as well as the future questions that raises for us and what the future might look like. We'll also have Ailey, who's an online volunteer from Aspen, and Brenda, a local volunteer, a VC volunteer from Hoima Diocese in Uganda, and Quay, who's the director of Global Exchange Program for SERVE based in Vietnam. So again, please type questions into the chat box as they come to you, and they'll be gathered for a Q&A session at the end. So Mark, I invite you to introduce yourself to everybody.
Great, thank you, and good morning, everybody. I hope you can all hear me well. My name is Mark Cumming, and I'm the head of Comhlámh. Comhlámh is the association of Irish people involved in international development, humanitarian and solidarity work. And we've been around for some 45 years. So we're like the national alumni of people who have been involved. And over the last 15 years, or a little bit more now, we have hosted what's called the Code of Good Practice for International Volunteering. And there's about 35 Irish organisations who are party to this Code of Good Practice, which seeks to promote responsible and ethical and good practice in international volunteering. So thank you to Viatores for the invite to speak a little and then to moderate the coming sessions, which I think, yeah, I'm really looking forward to, because they very much speak to the trends and some of the directions of what is happening in terms of good practice in international volunteering. And also just to celebrate and just to acknowledge and to recognise the research that Viatores has done, recently published online, and no doubt a link will go into the chat now in a moment, on inclusive online volunteering for humanitarian aid, and it's a really good contribution to all these reflections. Just a few words then, if I may, then. Basically, yeah, as I've said a bit about kind of what we're doing in terms of supporting good practice in international volunteering. And the context of where we're at now is that COVID effectively in March last year shut everything down. And there was a very good dialogue within the sector here in Ireland around what would be responsible and what would be appropriate in terms of both the safeguarding of the Irish people getting involved, but also the communities within which they would be going to. And very quickly a decision was taken collectively that the people should not be travelling. So it's been interesting, because we ourselves at Comhlámh, we do not send volunteers. So we're supporting kind of critical reflection in the sector. And there has been, for the last 10 years or more, roughly about 2,000 Irish people travelling on an international volunteer assignment every year, which is quite a significant number when you consider the size of this country. But I suppose we have been questioning as Comhlámh, and we have been prompting and pushing the sector, and also then Irish Aid, the official cooperation programme of the Irish government, to reflect more critically around the changing understanding of and critique of development. You know, the development discourse is largely founded in the post-colonial era, and very much founded in that notion that there are countries that are developed and there are countries that are underdeveloped. And of course, this is actually quite colonial and quite unsatisfactory, and there's plenty of critique of that. But the volunteering has kind of come into that space, has emerged out of that space, international volunteering. And there have been, we've brought serious critiques to that over the last several years, looking to encourage new ways of thinking and new ways of working. So what we've seen, and again, we've published research on this over the years, and what we've seen in response to the pandemic over the last year has been, I suppose, the emergence of some really kind of new and good responses, which were maybe some of the things that we would have been encouraging over the last number of years. So again, I'm thinking of again the reframing of reframing the volunteering experience within a wider frame of learning about global citizenship, about learning about our place in the world, and the interrelationship of ourselves with the wider world. And so we've seen some of the Irish agencies in the Code of Good Practice develop local volunteering here in Ireland, whereby what they're involved in terms of education or social service provision is rooted in an analysis of what's happening globally, so that the local and global connections are made. We've seen other agencies develop online volunteering initiatives, and again, we're going to be hearing some experiences about that in the case studies now later this morning. We also have seen agencies beginning to engage in hosting basically national volunteers. So rather than sending international volunteers, they're using their funding and their resources and working with their partners to recruit volunteers in the Global South for that work in the Global South. We've also actively been promoting the questions of greater social inclusion and greater diversity in those who volunteer. unfortunately, there is very little official funding for international volunteering. So largely it is the preserve of people who are a bit better off economically. And again, we've seen some new initiatives emerge whereby agencies have raised funding and basically created bursaries to target people who are would be normally excluded from these opportunities. And again, it'll be great to hear one of the examples in the session now later on. Other examples, again, one of the agencies in the Code of Good Practice has hosted international volunteers here in Ireland, even during the course of the pandemic. And again, this is a strong narrative around making volunteering not just a global north to global south dynamic, but something that can be south-south, but also south-north. And again, there are great examples of that beginning to enter into the mainstream in partner countries in Europe. Again, we've seen other partners that have been active in using their networks in Ireland, not to recruit volunteers, but instead to fundraise for their local partners to ensure that the programs are continuing there on the ground. So a lot of innovations, a lot of movement, which maybe people didn't think they could do before, but now
2 minutes there, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah, and now have been forced to engage with because of COVID. So we have kind of somewhat tongue-in-cheek spoken about COVID as an opportunity. What's interesting then in the background then is that we have encouraged Irish Aid to do a review of its international volunteering policy, which was last developed in 2013. And Irish Aid commissioned a review that most of the agencies in Ireland contributed into in terms of where the future of international volunteering should go. And we're looking forward to that report being published by Irish Aid, and Irish Aid kind of coming back to the sector with its reflections on the future. But we understand that, you know, many of the things that are there that were proposed by the consultants who came in after the reflections on what's happening in Ireland, the sorts of issues that we were raising in Ireland, and what they could see happening internationally, that we hope that there will be greater support from Irish Aid for greater diversity and greater social inclusion in international volunteering, a greater inclusion of global citizenship education in international volunteering, and what have you. So I will leave my introduction at that, and again, thank you for this opportunity. And without further ado, I will introduce our next two colleagues. Camilla Novara is the Global Citizenship Education Manager at ASPEM Italy, one of the partners here in the VIVID Consortium. And Ailey McEwen is a Scottish academic. She is deaf and currently engaged as an online volunteer with ASPEM. And so I'm going to hand over now to Camilla and Ailey, and I welcome you both, and over to you. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Mark. I share my screen. Okay, I think you can see my screen. Perfect. Hello, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. I'm Camilla Novara from ASPEM, an Italian NGO partner of VIVID project. With me today, there is Hilly, our online volunteer, and in 2 minutes you will meet her. I'm here to tell you about our experience in online volunteering, and okay, the project in which this experience has carried out is a capacity building project financed by the European Union in the framework of EU AV initiative and led by ASPEM. 17 partners from 3 continents, Africa, Europe, and Latin America, participate in this project with the aim of empowering send and DOS organizations to manage volunteers. Different actions has been put in place in order to reach the European standards to give the European certification, as well as to reinforce consortium skills and collaboration. And also 2 mapping activities have been implemented in the project. On the one hand, each organization conducted a survey in its country to identify some best practices, and on the other hand, the complementary action of the online volunteering was intended to map online tools and resources for manage the volunteering. During this project, to ensure that the volunteering process was effective, we have adopted some tools and strategies. For example, Healy, our volunteer, has already a job, and we know that volunteering and working at the same time it's not easy. And for reason, it's been important to ensure flexibility and respect for the needs and the time of the volunteering. And to facilitate her participation, we share with her the association's tools, and we created for her a dedicated account. In this way, she was able to share our tools and access the calendar or the drive and all other Google functions shared by the staff. And we adopted also some inclusive tools like captioning function. This was very, very important, and we proposed some training and meeting to make Healy, our volunteer, part of the work group. So some meetings with all the staff to know the mission, the vision, and the activities of our organization, and also some meetings with all the partners of the consortium. During this project, we met some challenges, for example, digital challenges. It's very important and necessary to have the tools to ensure the participation and the collaboration, the communication. And when we work remotely, it's more difficult to monitor activities. So you have to carefully follow this process, encouraging constant updates with the volunteer, between the volunteer and the organization. And for the same reason, it's very important also the creation of an inclusive and collaborative group who involve all the staff, the volunteer, and also all the partners. And so why do we promote the online volunteering? Because it favors the participation of a wider pool of people, including people with disabilities, and also people who has already a job, for example, because it is a flexible participation, a flexible experience. And to ensure this experience is very important to have accessible digital tools. This is a very important strategy to ensure all this process of online volunteering. And now I leave the floor to Willy, our volunteer, who will directly tell you her experience in this project and also her work in this project. And thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Ailey. I'll just share the PowerPoint on the screen now. So I first started volunteering with ASPEM Italy in May 2021, and I learned about this opportunity through the mailing list for the EU Aid Consortium. I was interested in learning more about volunteering at the EU level and the policy making being carried out with international development at the EU level. So that's how I started the process of being an online volunteer. Volunteering online has been quite a different experience because I've had the opportunity to volunteer in Global South contexts before, which gave me a lot of opportunities to make international connections and to learn face to face. But due to changes with the COVID-19 pandemic, volunteering has mainly moved to online. So this has been quite an interesting experience to have the opportunity to volunteer at the EU level. So my role as an ASPIM volunteer involved conducting research with organisations in the EU consortium. There were 17 organisations in the EU consortium who responded to questionnaires that I sent out. These involved some EU organisations who were based in the EU and some organisations from the Global South. We were looking at the process of how to create mapping tools that guide volunteers and prepare volunteers prior to volunteering with the host organisation, whether that's a national organisation in country or an organisation in the Global South. The questionnaire looked at a variety of experiences of how organisations had mapped tools to guide volunteers and how organisations were being certified.
Just 2 minutes there, Ailey, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Just 2 minutes, 2-minute time warning.
Oh, okay. The process of volunteering online was another interesting transition because I've previously volunteered in in-person environments, but volunteering online meant that a lot of the meetings were held via Zoom or Google Meet. As a deaf person whose first language is English, the captioning on Google Meet was okay, but using speech-to-text reporters, which are funded by the institution, are much better because the captioning is completely accurate. I know some automatic captioning services are used to assist with, but I find that funded captioning by speech-to-text reporters are far more accurate. So they give a full picture of the conversation and the dialogue that's happening. So returning back to the research findings, during the pandemic, a lot of the organisations in the EU consortium transitioned from the number of volunteers that they worked with before the pandemic to those they worked with during the pandemic and after the pandemic. So as you can see from this diagram here, for 7 organisations, there was no change in the number of volunteers they worked with or sent overseas, but for 3 organisations, they sent more volunteers before the pandemic. So some of the findings were quite unexpected and that there was no change reported. So one of the other findings was linked to inclusive volunteering, and the accessibility of volunteering for people with different disabilities. So some organisations in the consortium gave reasons for why their mapping tools for volunteering were not accessible. For example, there was no translators available to translate into that language. The organisation staff had not had training in accessibility in different formats. There was a lack of training in how to create accessible formats, or there was a lack of budget for interpreters, translators, or other forms of communication support.
Sorry, Ailey, it would be final comments now, please.
Okay, no worries. Thanks for listening. I hope that gave a little bit more of a picture of my experience as a deaf volunteer with the EU consortium.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ailey, and thank you, Camilla. And sorry, Ailey, the time machine is a bit brutal. But I thank you for those for that introduction to your work. And I hope if people have questions, if you could pop them into the chat box, and yeah, there's a chance for people to engage there online as well, and also come back at the end for the plenary. Okay. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rose Bavuga. She's the Via Torres Christi East Africa Regional Coordinator, and she will give a bit of context to the placement then of Brenda Odongo. Brenda is a mediation expert and engaged as a remote representative for Via Torres in the Mission Cara funded project in Hoima in Uganda. So Rose, if you'd like to do a quick introduction, and then myself and Brenda will have a chat.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Rose Salama, working with the Via Torres Christi, as already said by the commentator. VC has been piloting use of local representatives approach in Africa as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is specifically taking in place in Uganda, where we have many of our projects. This way, we do not work alone. We work with the different stakeholders like Mission Cara and EU, who have been funding most of our project activities. VC places international volunteers to work alongside the local staff counterparts to build their local because of the changes in the world order, where the lockdowns were instituted and restrictions on gatherings and travel. And this forced us to evacuate most of our international volunteers back to their respective countries. But because we didn't want the work to stop, we needed continuity, and this is the time they needed us most. The local counterparts who previously worked with international volunteers took over for the continuity. And it made us appreciate the role of the former volunteers, because the skills, the knowledge and experience that they got from the previous volunteers enabled them to undertake the work with little or no support from international volunteers. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. And Brenda is one of these people who took over the role of international volunteers, and we now currently call them the local VC representatives. Brenda is working with the Hoima, with the Peace and Justice Hoima Diocese in Western Uganda, which is supported by Mission Cara to strengthen the capacities in conflict resolution and peace building to improve access and advocacy, to improve advocacy and access to human rights and fundamental freedoms. These VC representatives, they undertake the roles of being the liaison officers between Viates Christi and their respective partner organizations or organizations. They also undertake the oversight role on behalf of VC at the project site as regards achieving the activities, the results, ensuring good value for money and compliance of laws and other regulations. They also work with staff and other stakeholders in a training and mentoring capacity. And finally, these people work as team lead in reporting, preparing funding proposals, monitoring and evaluation, and networking, among many other activities or roles played in the project cycle management at their respective partner organizations. Thank you.
Oh, I'm on mute there. Yeah, great, Rose. Thank you for that. And Brenda, good morning. How are you? How are things?
Oh, I'm okay, Mark. How are you?
Great. Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
So Brenda, yeah, let's with chance to kind of be in conversation, and maybe I'll put a few questions to you just to kind of get the conversation going. But yeah, can you tell us a bit about what it's like then to be with the Viates Christi in this way, and how they have supported you, training, mentoring, you know, and involved you in representative meetings, etc.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Mark, I joined Justice and Peace Commission, that is in 2019.
Oh, you're on mute there, Brenda.
Yes, I was just giving a small background that I joined Justice and Peace in 2019 as a mediation officer. And yes, the volunteers who were there took us through a lot of training. They showed us how things are supposed to be done at international level. And in 2020, when COVID came in, they had to leave and we had to go on the road. And we were not all that perfect, and we still needed guidance and more training. And VC played a very big role in that. Yes, and they engaged us in our online trainings, and we've been having online meetings. Rachel has been taking us through these trainings, meetings, every month to build our capacity and help us make sure that the project we are handling is being implemented in the right way. Yes, and these trainings included report writing, safeguarding, M&E. Yeah, she has really been taking us through a lot to ensure that the project continues. Despite the transition that we've had. That's it. Thank you.
And in terms of that transition then, can you say a bit about what have been some of the benefits then to the diocese by having you then rather than an international volunteer?
The transition has been an opportunity to us. We see it as an opportunity for the local people, to take up these projects and handle issues that affect the local people. We've been put at the forefront to have that sense of ownership of the project and see that we identify these issues that are affecting people and handle them, as local people. And with the local knowledge that we have, we've gone through some of these things and we understand them better. So it has helped us to take up this role, and on the other hand, it has given us an opportunity to handle some of these issues and show what we can as local people, you know, in resolving issues that affect our local people. Yeah.
Yeah, very good, Brenda. Thank you. Yeah. And have you thoughts then about the future of this type of engagement and this sort of model that Via Torres have now effectively pioneered in their work?
Yes, when it comes to online volunteering, yeah, it is a very good approach. It's, you know, a very good way of ensuring continuity of what was already in place. Yes, because we see that with that, we've been able to carry on. And yeah, I think it's very, very important to see that, yes, we carry on with it. And to see that we continue providing guidance, you know, like to see that VC continues to give guidance to the people down here, you know, to see that we continue to implement the project to the required standards, and to also monitor, you know, whatever is happening, down here. It's very important,
Yeah, very good, Brenda. And Brenda, like, you know, we're in the throes of a conversation here in Ireland about the future of international volunteering. Like, what are your perspectives on the future of international volunteering and where it's going and how it needs to change and adapt?
Well, the future of international volunteering, I think, would perhaps look at more of building capacity and engaging people, and to include things like exchange visits. Building capacity and giving the local people, you know, that opportunity of getting to know more and more, you know, pulling us from where we are to, you know, a better level, you know. I think this could be a good opportunity, like if, for example, the local people are given an opportunity to, you know, maybe reach that side and get to see exactly how certain things are done. I think this would be a very important way of doing this. And then I think online volunteering would also be very good in that it gives people the opportunity, you know, it is not restricted to only a particular group of people. It would encourage so much people of maybe people with a certain disabilities, people who are not able to move. Like people with disabilities. I see that this would encourage so much disability inclusiveness. And when it comes to reducing inequalities in communities, I think this would really be a very good way of, you know, working on this. And it would as well help so much in, you know, achieving one of the global goals of reduced inequalities in communities and in, you know, the work environment. Yes.
Great, Brenda. Thank you for that. And we're just kind of on time. So Brenda, that was really interesting, and we wish you a good continuation in your work, and also then, you know, congratulate and the innovation of the Diocese Via Torres Christi, and then with the support of their back donor Mission Cara in making this kind of new innovation in the model of volunteering. Okay, thank you, Brenda, and thank you, Rose.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, if you have questions for Brenda, please throw them into the chat, and we'll have time at the end for a Q&A. Okay, it's my pleasure now to introduce Kwei Nguyen. Kwei is the Vice Director of VTalk, an online initiative of the Center for Sustainable Development Studies, the CSDS in Vietnam, and a program that they've taken on in response to COVID-19, and with the support of various organisations, including Serve, an Irish volunteer sending agency, like Via Towards Christie, part of the Irish Code of Practice. So Quay, over to you.
Thank you very much. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I am Quế, the Director of Global Exchange Program from Vietnam. And it is my honor today to share with you about the VTalk program, which means also virtual talk with the slogan, Future Without Borders. And VTalk is an initiative of our organization, Center for Sustainable Development Studies, CSDS, a local NGO in Vietnam, in response to the pandemic, with the support of some volunteer organizations, including Serve. And we focus on English teaching and cultural exchange. The objectives of VTalk include like English improvement for local students in Vietnam, and improve cultural understanding, not only for Vietnamese students, but also for the volunteers as well. And it improves confidence for the students, and also sometimes for the volunteers as well, especially those who are young and who still not used to this kind of volunteering work. And through the sharing and learning together, both the volunteers and also especially the students also develop personally and professionally during the program. And it leads to a better employment opportunities for the local students here. With VTalk, we conduct it via Zoom or Google Meet, and we use communication approach, which means that it focuses on speaking and listening skill, instead of like grammar or reading and writing, which is being done quite good by the local teachers here. And we pair one volunteer with one student, or sometimes when the volunteer has teaching experience, we can match them with more than one student, like a group of students. And one volunteer has to commit for at least 1 hour per week, and at least for 2 months, if they teach English, or at least 4 sections if they join the cultural exchange program. So far, partners of CSDS or VTalk includes volunteer organizations like Serve, or individual volunteers who somehow get to know about us and come to us, and also some educational institutions as well. Our students are from 12 to 22 years old, and they need to have strong passion in learning English, in sharing about culture, and also in they need English. They learn it because they need it, not just like for fun. And they have to commit throughout the program, like full commitment. And we prioritize for students who are from less advantaged background, like ethnic minority groups, or students with disabilities, or from poorer families. So these are 3 criteria about students, because we have too many students queuing. So we have to really do a very careful selection process for the students. So the roles of CSS are like doing promotion, get people know about our program locally. And then we do screening and recruitment. There was one time we got more than 300 applications. Why we could only choose 20 students for the program at that time. And then we do orientation, not only for the students, but also for the volunteers as well, to make sure that they understand the nature of this program, and also they know what they should do and what they shouldn't do during the program. And then we support the volunteers and the students inside and outside class, especially with the translation. And we also, for the students who are under 18, we always need to sit in the class like all the time, every single lesson, just to observe the child protection policy that SURF and CSS set out at the beginning. And at the end, we do evaluation. There are lots of challenges in the program. The main things are volunteers, like both quality and quantity. We do not have as many volunteers as we need for the students. And also not all volunteers are well trained, like experienced with English teaching. And facilities, equipment, like many students from poor families, but they do not have phones or computers to join this program. And the curriculum, we haven't got a very comprehensive or like detailed curriculum to help those volunteers without experience. So for those volunteers, it can be a little bit challenging at the beginning. And monitoring and evaluation, we need to develop an even better evaluation system to see the impact of this program. Okay, and this is the vision of VTalk. You know that we developed this program during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic. But now, given the fact that it has so many benefits and advantages, it allows the volunteers of all backgrounds, all ages, of all distances to give back, and also same for the students from like different provinces in Vietnam, like people with disabilities, people from poor backgrounds and things. So we believe that it is not just a response to the pandemic, but we want it to be a long-term program.
2 minutes there, Quay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you, Quay, for that. Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, congratulations on the innovation that you've done, and congratulations with your partnership with the various organisations, including SERV. So yeah, we have 10 minutes remaining, and we have one question that's already been posted in to the chat, and I might go straight to that and invite others then to feel free to post in your questions. The first question then is directed to Dr. Ailey McAwing, and which is good because I think Dr. Ailey, you were cut off a short bit. But so the question is basically, what are your views on online volunteering versus in-presence volunteering? While online volunteering is a great option for all, we need to also be careful that organisations don't offer it as a substitute to volunteering in presence, and for those with disability, for those who are disabled. So just curious to hear your thoughts, Ailey, on that.
So I think while online volunteering can be more accessible for people who might not be able to volunteer in person. For example, they're working full time, or they've got children, or due to a range of disabilities, it might be difficult for them to travel abroad at that point in time. So I think online volunteering can offer some benefits in terms of accessibility, and it can allow people to network internationally quite effectively. But I think in terms of volunteering in person, there's no substitute for the opportunity to exchange a cultural experience. So volunteering online takes away a lot of the aspect of a cultural experience, like learning more about the language locally. So while it's good because it's more accessible on some levels, and it's a good way to build an international network, and it can involve more people, I think volunteering in person is a much richer experience. So that's my opinion of it.
Yeah, thanks, Ailey. Yeah, I think that your answer is kind of borne out by research internationally, by the International Forum Network and the International Network of International Volunteering Organizations, about like the person to person is important. But we definitely are living in a hybrid world, and maybe the online opens up opportunities and helps to create new partnerships between, like what we're seeing in this VIVID consortium, between mainstream development organizations and then specialist organizations involved in the disability space. But yeah, I think that the sentiment behind the question is there, and Ailey, your response is spot on. We have another question here then. Ailey, did you have any challenges as a deaf person engaging with an Italian NGO? What sign language and tech did you use to communicate effectively?
Sorry, I'm just waiting for the question to come through. The captions not appeared yet.
Okay, let me pop another question to another colleague then while that's going through. A question then from Colette in Via Torres Christi. Can Rose, Brenda or Via Torres tell us if they will continue this arrangement that they have in future post-COVID? So a challenge to you there, is this a flash in the pan because of COVID, or will this be the evolution of a new way, or part of a new way of working? I don't know who would like to take that. Maybe Rose, would you like to take that question?
Go for it, Rose.
Thank you. I think we are already in a new normal. We can't go back to the old way of doing things. Things have changed a lot and we have to change a lot. Piloting the local VC representatives was one of the options that was available by then, but it doesn't mean that we're going to focus on only that. There are other different ways that we can focus on to improve international volunteering and having genuine development in place. And among other things, there is having a blended approach, because you may find that there are projects that are new and they do not have the required skills and expertise to undertake that work, and you need to bring someone who can do that. And sometimes you may find that person cannot be locally found here. So that means you have to source him or her outside the country or the region. And then there are also, the new norm is dictating a lot of things, like the online volunteering. Yes, it is an option, but you also have to think of different things. For example, do we have the structures and capacities in place to support the online volunteering? If yes, then we can do, but if we do not have them or we do not support them, then online volunteering might not be a great option for some projects. Then as for VC, we've been looking more at long-term volunteering, but I think it's high time we think about short-term volunteering, whereby if there is a certain task or an assignment that cannot be undertaken locally by the people there, then maybe that person can come in for a few months or a short period of time, do it as he or she trains the local counterpart, then it goes on. And another avenue would be reciprocal volunteering, where we have the exchange of volunteers. For example, we can have project staff from Hoima Diocese to go and work maybe in Ireland for a certain period of time, and also the other ones to come to work with the Hoima for a certain period of time. And in that we will have the, how do you call it, the cultural exchange, or we'll have that opportunity to appreciate the difference between the two, the North and the South. Sometimes we do undertake development initiatives, but we have not fully appreciated the differences, and we keep on putting the blame on one side or the other. So I'll give an example of the new normal, where we have to use online communication and online kind of work. But many of our projects or many of our partners in the South do not have the facilities in place. But if the donor is in the North and they have the facilities, they might think that there is one size that is fitting all, which is not the case. So if they come and stay with that community, then they will have that chance of appreciating that difference. And when they are laying strategies, then they will be able to accommodate those differences or the difficulties that are existing in the other part of the world.
Great.
I hope I've answered that question.
No, great, and I'm delighted that you've also discussed the question of reciprocity and breaking down the old paradigms of North to South only and that one directionality. Thank you, Rose. Okay, we've time for two more quick questions. Ailey, Dr. Ailey, have you seen the question there now?
Yeah.
Can I give you a minute, and then I'm going to a minute then to Quay for one last question.
Okay, there'll be a slight delay because the captioning is coming through, but for volunteering with ASPIM at the EU level, we used automatic captioning on Google Meet, and this was okay, and then we supplemented it with online chat, writing English in the chat box. But I think many organisations at the EU level could benefit from funding for international sign interpreters and for speech-to-text reporters, because the international sign interpreters or the speech-to-text reporters are 100% accurate, while automatic captioning it's a good function to use, but it's not 100% accurate, so there's always errors coming through. And yeah.
Okay. Yeah, great, Ailey. Yeah, thanks for that. And again, I think that one message that comes through all this this morning is the question of resources, because if we want to move from the status quo, we need to shift the way resources are used and provided. And Quay, a last word to your good self. What were the outcomes for the children? Did the English language improve for them, and is this the future?
Yeah, we can see the positive change after just like some sections, like some lessons. For example, at the first lesson, the children still didn't know how to react to a question from the volunteer, but like just after some lessons, they are already very like confident to not only answer the question, but also to initiate some very basic conversation. So we can see that the confidence of the students is improved. Their English, especially speaking and listening, is improved. And the thing is that the thing that we love about this is that it gives the students the reason and the motivation to dream bigger. So now they know that, oh, they have a friend from Ireland or from UK, from US, and they can speak with them. So they want to keep that, at least that personal bonding first, and then it helps them to grow more motivation and dream to like study abroad or like learn English better, to have better communication and then also better job in the future. So that's why we really love this program, and it is appreciated by the students and the parents and the schools. Thank you.
Lovely, Quay, and we wish you a good continuation with that. Okay, I'm looking at our controller Rachel, and it just behoves me then to wrap up and close. We're slightly over. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you to Camilla and Ailey from ASPEM. Thank you to Rose and Brenda from Viatores Christi and the Diocese of Hoima, and for Quay from the CSDS in Vietnam. I think we've touched on really important themes this morning around diversity and inclusion, and then the place of online volunteering in all of that. So without further ado, I draw this session to a close, and I wish you all good continuation today, and invite you on then to the next session. Rachel, over to you.
Thanks very much, Mark. That was perfect. I know we went a little over in some areas. I will not be everybody's friend going forward. I'm afraid I will yell at people when they're coming to the end of their time. We have quite a packed session. So we're going to finish this one now, folks, and we'll all join back here again at 11:15. So if you want to join a little early, that would be best, because we will start on the button at 11:15. So you should have the Zoom link, and if not, a reminder will be sent out to you with that shortly. Thanks very much, everyone.